Today we're going to make this. Let's get started. Here we are in Google Translate, and I have chosen the word cinema as the word that I'm going to use on the neon sign. So just put that into Google Translate and whatever you want, and hit copy. So I'm here on freejapanesefont.com, and since I was last here, there's actually some really nice looking ones. However, for the kind of retro futuristic look, I want this one that I found called Nikokaku. And this font, it gives us these nice big bold outlines. So I'm in Illustrator, and I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter what version you're in. I think for the last 10 years they'll have had everything I'm doing here. So I'm going to put in the vertical type tool and just hit Control V, and there we go, we've got our lovely fontiness from the internet. Now I need to, this word cinema in Japanese, I need to use the font that we've just downloaded, which is Nikokaku. So I don't think that will be listed in the Latin fonts that I've got, unless I'm really lucky. Ah, well yeah, it appears to be here. Okay, excellent. So all I need to do now is adjust the kerning on this type. So I'm just going to hold Alt and just sort of bring this all in. I kind of want to just sort of have neon bulbs inside these, you know, so maybe like 5. But I really want to respect the typography here, and, you know, also I'm quite lazy. So what we're going to do is, now that we've got these and they're all ungrouped, and also if we look at this, we can release the compound path on all of these, and that just means that these lines are all accessible. So now I've got the exact duplicate layer, I'm going to hit C, which is cut, and I'm going to come into my inner lines here, and I'm just going to lock the layer below. And yeah, if I come over here, you can see, then I hit C, and that just makes two dots in exactly the same point, control vertices, whatever you want to call them. But basically now I have one line, I have two line. So I'm just going to go through and cut with C on every single edge point here. So on these ones I want to do vertical lines, so I'm going to need to just copy these in place. So that's Apple C, Control C, and then Apple F, Control F. So there we go. I might just put these on another layer. So I'm going to go Arrange, Center Current Layer. Then you see I have an exact copy of that vertical line. Just take this one out. Ooh. And lock the inner lines, there we go. So now I've got an exact copy of that line. Go back to my inner lines, select these two, like this, Control C, Control F. And then on layer 3, Center Current Layer. And lock inner lines, and there we go. On layer 3 we have exactly 2 lines like this. So now I'm going to make blends between these lines. So what I want to do is say, oh, lock my inner lines off, get these two vertical lines here, like this, and then I want to come to Object and Blend, and come to my blend options, and this time I want to do 5 specified steps. So if I click OK, and then if I go Control-Alt-B to make the blend, the reason why the blend has failed is because one of these lines has its start point at the top and one of them has the start point at the bottom. So it's kind of doing a twisting motion when it makes the blend. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to take the path, and I'm going to reverse path direction. And now we get the proper blend. So for this shape was challenging. The blend wasn't following all around the horseshoe shape, so I just made cuts here and here. As you can see, if I select these lines, just there and there, grab these, make my blend, and you can see it's starting to go kind of wrong around this area. If I grab this, I should be able to edit how this is interpreted by the blend. So if I take this down a bit, this one to the back a bit, like this, just try and smooth this out as much as possible. I don't want to do much editing. So then with the V tool, grab these two, and I'm not expecting this blend to work at all, so there we go. Strangely, it seems to have worked. Now we just need to take the lines back from the boxes that they inhabit. So just where you see on here, I've taken these in from the left and the right. I'm just going to take these shapes in, but to do that on these complex shapes, I need to expand these blends. So come to expand, like that. And that enables us to access these blends and make them into real lines. Now what we want to do is delete all of the outer lines that we've got. So with these two layers selected, I'm just going to grab everything and just make sure nothing is in a group. So Object, Ungroup, and can't ungroup them because they're not in a group. So let's just come and delete. Sorry, I'll turn this off. Let's delete the outer layers. Those are in a group. So let's delete those. Those are in a group. So that's Control-Shift-G to ungroup them. So Control-Shift-G. I just want to delete these outer ones. So now that the splines are all complete and, you know, almost complete, I say this, you know, there's always something that you notice that's wrong. All we need to do now is save it in a format that Cinema4D can recognise. I'm sure most of you know we've just got to save it as Illustrator 3 format. So if we go to, yeah, that is the right folder. So I'm going to save that as Cinema Japanese. Now we just save as AI, and when it says Illustrator CC, come down to Illustrator 3 and click OK. Don't show again. So here we are in Cinema4D. Let us just open our file and come on. Let's just open our Japanese neon sign AI, and I want cinema. That's it. Not too worried about the scale. Here we go. And you can see this outer one is our 4K artboard, and this inner one will be our lovely splines. So let's get into the organization of these. First things first, I'm going to delete this null without children. So if you come up here to objects, delete without children. And I've set that to Alt plus delete, which is really useful because you need to do it all the time. So let's delete the artboard. Now let's grab everything, Control A, and then go Alt G to group it. And then I'm just going to reset the PSR. Now it's in the middle of our comp. Again, we've got another artboard spline here. I just want to delete that. The first thing we need to do is grab our outlines, because these are going to be made of thick blocks of wood, which are, or you know, whatever, which are going to hold our neon bulbs. Actually, now's a good point to set the scale of the scene. When you're working with lights like we are, you really want stuff to be in real world scale. So I don't want this to be any more than, say, 250, like let's say 3 meters tall. So that's 300. So I'm going to grab that null and I'm just going to hit T and scale it in till it's basically a decent size. I think like that. Okay. So these are our outlines. So Alt G, and this null is going to be outlines. And then hit unparent here, or you can do that in, you can do that in commands, unparent, but I've just set it up here. Unparent has the lovely effect of throwing things to the top of your object manager. So let us now put an extrude object on this, on the outlines here. So I'm just going to hit Alt and connect objects like that, and that will make them all treated as one. And turn off weld, don't need them to be welded. And then I'm going to hit Alt and extrude. And 20 centimeters is crazy, so 5, maybe that suits it. Yeah, that's not too bad. For the next part of the process, let me just apply our sweep to our bulb splines. So bulb splines first of all, and then I'm going to connect those, and then I'm going to add like a, I think just an end side, so I can see how many sides I've got. 6, let's do 12 sided end side. Let's make it 2 centimeters radius. That's pretty good, but I think it's still a bit too big. So I think that's still a bit too big. Let's maybe 1 centimeter, and then no intermediate points. This is literally a 12-sided spline. And we're going to take that, and we're going to take that. That's our profile. And this is our bulbs. And then we're going to throw those in a sweep, as you know. So I'm just going to colour the background differently, so just give that some kind of colour so we can see what's going on. That didn't seem to help at all. Okay, so we could just leave it here and just make these neon, and I mean, life would be simple. But glass doesn't really behave like this. We want these nice ends here to sort of curl round and go into the green backplate here, like a bent piece of glass tube in wood. So we're going to do yet more really exciting spline editing. So I'm going to take all of my bulb splines, and instead of the connect, if I just take the connect here, if I just hit C, now all of those bulbs are in the same spline. And that's quite useful, because what I'm going to do now is go into my front view, and I'm going to come in here to hit K and just slice them as close as you can to the end, like that. Hit escape, and I'm using R18, which is why I have to escape out of the knife tool. In R17 and below, you will not have this issue. So then just grab these, then obviously we're able to move them back. And the difference in the z-axis between that and that is so small that it's going to serve our purposes. Then, once we've done this to all of our points, we're just going to come in here, add a nice chamfer. So now I've chamfered all of these corner edges on all of these splines, and you can see what I'm going to do now. So turn your sweep back on, and there we go, we have our bulbs. So I want these bulbs to animate in maybe sort of 3 steps. So the 2 outer ones will be alight at the same time, then the 2 inner ones, and then the center one. To do that, I'm going to need to make 3 sweep objects for 3 materials, and they will have a staggered animation. So I'm going to turn my sweeps back off, and I'm just going to go through and I'm going to select the bulbs that I want. So let's come in here, and with 9, with our brush selection, we're just going to brush a couple of the outer ones. And then the reason for that is if you go U and then W, you select all of the connected spline points. So just to get a couple of the outer ones, U, W, like that. Come here, U, W, like that. U, W, that. UW. Now to split these off, I've selected one of these that I shouldn't have, so maybe I could do just some judicious brushing to get rid of that one, like that, holding down Control. So now I just want these on their own. I can go UP, and then after I've done UP, I hit backspace to delete them. Now you can see up here in the Object Manager, I've got these ones on their own, so this is outer. Now I'm going to go back into the bulbs one, and I'm just going to select the inner, the center of each of these, and I think these ones actually need to be UW, UP, delete. Okay, now I've got this one here needs to be added to outer, so I'm going to drag it below outer like that, and I'm going to go connect objects and delete like that. So again, come in here, go to the middle one of each one, UW, like this, like this, like this, like this, like this. And I think these haven't been chamfered, so I'll do that in a second. I'm just going to grab that anyway. Grab the middle one, like this, UW. Okay, so now I've got all my middle ones. I can go UP and backspace, and that's deleted it from there. So this is going to be inner or middle. Let's call it middle, and these are going to be inner. Okay, so let's chamfer those 2 that weren't chamfered before. Let's just hope this doesn't mess anything up. So this one, I'm just going to right click, chamfer, there we go, just about there. In the middle one, just grab that, my chamfer tool's selected already, so there we go, and that's that. Now let's just split these into 3 different sweeps. So this is going to be inner, and then I'm just going to control drag, and this one's going to be outer. I'm going to control drag, and this one will be middle. And then just delete the appropriate other ones. So delete, delete, this outer, so I'm just going to delete, and then this inner, so delete and delete. So now let's turn these sweeps back on, and you can see kind of what I'm going to do here. So I've got my outer, inner and middle, and let's just put that one at the bottom, and so they're going to animate like this: outer on, inner on, middle on. So all I need to do is make an animated texture for these. So it's really going to help if we can see our textures animating in the viewport. So to do that, we need to come up here and make sure that use color is on automatic. I haven't got anything applied and display color set to white. So let's go to our materials, double click, and let's just make our basic C4D material. I'm probably going to go into Octane, but for now, for the majority of people, they need to know how to do this without. So I want sort of a bit of fall off towards the back of the shape of the bulb. To do that, let's get a Fresnel, and let's invert the knots, and then I'm just going to bring this up to maybe 30%, something like that. And that will mean that at the front it's white, and then it'll fade off to sort of a grey colour. And if you multiply this over whichever colour you choose, in our case, I'm really bad at colour theory, so I don't know, should we make red ones? I suppose we should make red ones. So let's make some red. Let's do that. A nice bright vermilion. Now this is in the luminance channel and we're multiplying it, so it makes sense that this can go way above 100, and I think I'm just going to go with 230 because that's what worked before, I think. So it doesn't really show it very well in the little viewer here, but let's just apply this to our outer, and yeah, you can kind of see what's going on. Okay, so now to animate this, let's call this outer actually, and let's just go into the timeline for it. So I want to animate our brightness value, so that, no, actually I'm going to animate the mix strength, because at some point I want it to come down real low like this. So it's kind of getting some illumination from the neighbouring bulbs, and then it goes back up to 100. I mean, you can even, like, if we see how it's multiplying, you can even bring some of that shading back if you don't bring it up so high. But then the effect of the luminosity isn't as much, it won't be lighting the scene, and that's kind of what we want. So let's animate this mix strength anyway. So let's go down to about, I think, what was it? Like, let's do 6. So they start off, go into our timeline, and here it is. Here's our mix strength. So I'm going to go to, just arbitrarily, I'm going to go to 10 frames, and it's still off. And then it'll take 2 frames to warm up, and then it'll go up to like 100. So then I'm just going to click on that, edit the key value manually, 100, like that. And then it's going to be on for, say, I don't know, a second and a half. I don't know, 1 second is 25. Let's go, where are we, 12, let's go 30. That's not even 1 second. Let's go to 40. So it's on like this at 100%. And then again, just drag down the 6% one, 1, 2 frames, it drops back down, and then there's an equal gap. So we're at, what, 42 now. So let's drag this out to about 80, something like that. If we go into the F-curve editor, let's drag this up so you can see better, then all that happens is it just comes on and off. If we play this, that's all that happens. Simples. What we want to do is make sure that this kind of repeats forever and ever. So in order to do that, I'm going to need more than 90 frames. Let's put up my scene length to about 500 frames. All I want to do is, in the dope sheet here, I'm just going to click on mix strength, right click, after, repeat after. And if anything, I think that we've got 10 frames of darkness on the front, so maybe we can just delete this first keyframe and have these immediately start to illuminate at the start and then end at 80. And you can see in our dope sheet it comes up and then it repeats after 80 frames. If you want to do this by sort of 25 frames a second and you want to time it exactly to 3 seconds, maybe we'd take it to 75. And so I'm just going to hold down Shift and drag that back to 75. So now this repeats, but it doesn't repeat forever because we only have one repetition. So I'm just going to put that on 999 so I don't even have to think about it. So that's good. So that just works for the outer. Now to stagger it, we're going to do the same thing again. Let's just copy this by control dragging. This is going to be inner, and then let's come in the timeline for this. And we can see how that's going to pan out. All we have to do is put in the stagger ourselves, and let's say like this one's on. If we want this one to come on after the other one's ended maybe, then we drag it to here. And let's just drag this onto inner to check. So they're both off at the moment. And then I'm going to copy this one again, and this will be middle. Once my screen recording software allows me to type. Then middle here, we'll drag these out to the end of the inner. So let's go to our materials, and at this point in time middle is on, so let's drag that on. Now you can also repeat before, and the reason why that's important is because at this point there's no information for what's happening in the middle, and at this point there's no information for what's happening in the inner here. So let's go mix strength before, repeat before, and I'm going to put that on to 2, and I'm going to do the same thing for this one, repeat before, put that on to 2, and that way we make sure that we've got a nice looping animation. So that's not really that's not really animating the way I'd like it to. Let's make a nice nondescript material for our backplate, like this, and just make sure backplate's on automatic too, and see how it's animating. So the way that we make sure that the neon animation is staggered exactly is to ensure that each neon material is turned off for exactly double as long as it's on, so that it's off to allow for 2 cycles, the outer and the inner to cycle before the middle comes on. So say you have a 25 frame on cycle, then you'll need a 50 frame off cycle, and that way you'll see that we get our neons to cascade with only one material texture illuminated at any one time. But I just want to show you how to put a bit of randomness. Let's say I want one of these bulbs to act as if it's broken. So I'm going to get one of these, and it's this middle one here I'm going to make flicker. So I'm just going to copy that middle one. I'm going to call it flicker. Now I'm going to come over to the animated mix strength thing here, and I'm going to hit Control Shift and click on it, and that's going to delete the keyframes. What I want to do then is something quite clever. So I want to make a bit of... So first of all, I want to grab that sweep actually. So this is the middle, come into my middle ones here. I'm in points mode, and I know it's this one, UW, UP, delete, like that. Don't worry about this craziness. This is going to be called flicker. Like that. I'm just going to take that out here, going to grab this is called Flicker now, and grab that, put that there, and now we've got a flickering one. So the flickering one is going to be powered by espresso, but it's super easy espresso. Then to get the flicker material into my espresso, I'm just going to grab this and drag my flicker material into my espresso window. And then for luminance, I've got the mix strength slider here. So I'm going to add espresso, general, and noise. And noise is just like the noise in the shaders, but it generates a 0 to 1 and randomly generates a 0 to 1 over time, which is exactly what we need. So I'm going to take this noise and I'm going to add it to a range mapper. So we go to espresso, calculate range mapper. And all I want to do here is I want to make sure that this noise, which is flickering between 0 and 1, as you see, we've got 0 and 1 here. I want to make sure that this is powering our mix strength between 6%, so 6% to 100%. And then in order to make that kind of repeat, I want it to modulo, so I want it to sort of go through 100% and through 6% over time. So I'm going to put it on modulo, and I'm also going to use the spline. And on this spline presets, I think I can just get away with linear. Let's see if this works. So I'm going to add it there. So now if I come back, let's just redock this here, holding down Control. So if I grab this flicker material, I'm going to overwrite the material on our flicker sweep, and I'm just going to solo this out. Yep, that's the one. So now let's see what happens when we hit play. You see we get this strobing effect. Now it's not really particularly flickery, so all we need to do is edit our espresso. So you see we've got this nice gradual linear transition here, and we can just make this really harsh like that. You see it's happening really fast. So if I hold down Control and just introduce some, now you see if we go in, and all we can do to put a few more sort of breaks in this is just make sure that a lot of these are on 0. So like this one, let's drag this down, let's have this here, and let's have it out on 0 as well, like this. So we've now got this flickering light in the middle. So now I've edited the backplate so that our edges aren't so close to the ends of our neon tubes, and I've added this generic noisy sort of plastic texture to it. So now I want this backplate to be mounted on a nice sort of cloner object full of nice cascading lights. And the way that we're going to do this is I'm just going to grab all of these materials, I'm going to copy them, and then I'm just going to grab this color here and I'm going to make this a nice garish green. So now all of those are animated at exactly the same time as the red ones, and they are going to be applied to a load of cloned tubes. But this process is thankfully a lot faster, and I'll show you how. So in order to make this backplate, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to here and grab a rectangle object, and then let's make this less silly. So like I want it to look kind of like, let's make it like this, and then round it off on the corner, maybe a bit extreme, so like let's take that rounding down to like there. Then I'm going to put it on the XZ axis and drag it back to there. Okay, then I'm just going to grab one of these sweeps and copy it. So that's going to be sign, let's say like sign 1 like this, and instead of that one it's going to be our rectangle. Okay, now I think we might need a bit bigger of a profile, so like 2 centimeters, and that seems to work. Okay, so let's do this 3 times, sign 1, sign 2, and sign 3. So now I'm going to go 1, 2, and 3. And then just overwrite those materials. 1, 2, and 3. So let us now put all of these into a cloner. So put in a cloner, grab these 3 like this, and you see where this is going. Now as long as the cloner is set to iterate, they will be in the order that we've put them in here. So maybe I want 1, then 2, then 3. So in the cloner, I think I'll move the cloner up to about this high. That's where I want my sign to start. And if I do, yeah, let's keep it on per step, but let's go minus, and well, we know that they're 2, so let's do minus 5. And there, that's not too bad. So let's put that count up like that until we've made our sign, and I think that might work. So let's have a look now, and it will cascade like that. It's not perfect, obviously, the animation's a bit crazy, but perhaps that's what you're looking for. So you can see I've built a scene around our neon sign now to give it a bit of context. I've put this wall in, I've put this geometry in, I've put a few more lights in. There's this animated pink light that comes on and off. And there's a bit of secondary animation from these cables which just have a wiggle on them, and there's a flappy corner on this wanted poster I got from Google. And with the GI settings that we've got, this took 5 minutes 41 at 720p on a 12-core Xeon, so it's a really quite a heavy scene to render out, which is why I ported the whole thing over to Octane, and that's what we'll be doing in After Effects. The last thing I want to talk about with the Cinema4D shader scene instead of the Octane one is the export settings, which will probably be more or less the same for both. So if I go into our render settings, then it shouldn't be on 720, it should be on HD. So it should be on HD, and it should have all frames, and we're rendering out 160 frames, so we're going to have a 20 frame hold on the end. And then for my GI settings, I have Quasi Monte Carlo. I might actually turn off radiosity maps in the end. If I just do a test render, I can find out how long that will take on the current frame. And then my export settings are, I've got OpenEXR, 32-bit per channel. It's on a linear color space because my project, if you look down here, is set to linear. In terms of all of these passes, you would have an object buffer for all of the neons, one for just the lettering, the red neons, the Z depth channel, which is set up from the camera settings, and then a few other sort of information passes I can use if I need to sort of isolate anything. Anti-aliasing, normally for a scene like this I might leave it on geometry, but I think now that we've got these reflective tiles and we've got all this specular stuff, I think we need to have it on best, but I'll just leave that really low. I've just put this on Mitchell. Now to get our project into After Effects with our camera data, and to have, if we have a look here at the sign and the scene geometry, on the poster we have an external compositing tag, and on the neon sign itself as well. We have a external compositing tag, and those will come in as 3D nulls in After Effects. All of our lights also will come in, because if we come down here to compositing project file, you'll see that we've got After Effects is our application, and include 3D data means that all the lights and the camera and the external compositing tags all get exported to After Effects. And that will come in as a .aec file wherever you choose to save your renders. Double click that and you will get your scene in After Effects, and you will get your passes as well as your beauty pass, the main camera pass. I'm not really the best person to teach Octane, so I will just show you how you construct these neon shaders, because you know, they're not the easiest thing to work out on your own. So I guess what you'd probably do, if you didn't know any better, what you'd probably do is you would add a new diffuse material. So let's go to Octane, diffuse material, because diffuse is the one that has emission. So I'm just going to turn all these off just for the sake of brevity. So emission. So you get two choices: black body emission or texture emission. Now if I go in black body, which is what I normally do, then you see it's got exactly the same controls as a light, because ultimately it is a light. But I don't actually really want to do that. I'm going to put this on texture emission. And the reason for that is that I then just get this texture box here. It looks almost exactly the same as black body, but I want to use a texture. And this texture is simply going to be a Gaussian spectrum. And the Gaussian spectrum allows you to choose a color based on its wavelength. The reason why that's important is because if you just use RGB only goes up to 255, and so if you're using RGB to try and pick a color and you're using that to emit light, then it just blows out. It doesn't work at all. It's crazy. So let's get this down to something like there. If I go back here, then all I have to do to change the color is pick another part of the wavelength. So, you know, Roy G. Biv. What's quite important to note on these, let's go to number 2, this one here. If I get this and go into the texture emission, now surface brightness is turned on. If I turn that off, you'll see it's a lot brighter and it's affecting the tiles a lot more because cast illumination's on. So basically this is wrong. It's just spitting out light because it's more of a light source now. If I turn on surface brightness, it more or less tells it to treat it like an emissive surface. I don't know. I really do not know what these buttons do. It's just these two work. And then the other important thing is that for all of my lights in the scene, which are texture lights, all the neons, I've put the sampling rate up to 1000, and the reason for that is it's just 10 times as much sampling as the default, which is 100. All of the neons are basically on 1000, and then all of my other lights in the scene are like at 100 or 200, which is obviously 1 or whatever. It's just less sampling than the neons. The neons get very noisy if you don't give them enough sampling balance, you know. So we've got an emission node, that's a texture emission node going into the emission channel. And then we've got the Gaussian spectrum, which in this case is bright green. So in here, we've got a sampling rate of 1000, surface brightness, cast illumination on, And then it's the power in the texture emission node, that's the power which we're animating. So if I just bring up my timeline here, you'll see all of these, outer, inner, middle, and 1, 2, 3. I'm just animating that texture emission node's power. And then all those are set to repeat for about like 999 times, something like that. So there we go. So, and the good thing with Octane is obviously you can see it immediately. So there we go. I think the scene that I've constructed isn't like, I would have done so many more things, but for the sake of showing you people how to sort of work these things into a scene and sort of get some good illumination of it, I think you can see where I'm going with this. I've got my camera information here. I've got my lights if I need them, which normally you won't need to do any matching with sort of 3D objects in cinema. So in After Effects, that's fine. I have external compositing tags on the poster and on the neon sign. So if I do need to put in if I need to matte some objects out and have the mattes animate with the camera move, I can just stick solids to those nulls and have the mattes sort of moving perfectly with the camera. And then I have got some Google images, got this cityscape in the background, which I didn't actually use. And in cinema, I made this like fake HDRI, which has the same camera movement in it. And I rendered this out as a image matte as well, as an image sequence. And so that just sits behind. And then on top of that, we've got Frischluft, which just blurs out everything in the background here. So you can't see that it's a horrible JPEG from the internet. Really, I don't agree with having such shallow depth of field. I think it's a bit, it just makes everything look a bit small and not very sort of photoreal. These days I tend not to do much color correcting in After Effects. I can get so much done inside of Octane that I tend to just keep those sort of settings to Octane and make sure my colors are nice and sort of as good as I can in camera there. And then my glow settings, if I have a look at these, not that. If I look at my glow settings, I've actually put a really large glow. There's two schools of thought. You could either put the glow radius like really small down like this and have like a glowy glow like that, which would kind of, I don't know, you'd get that maybe if there was like some steam or some thick environment in the area. But with this giant glow on it, which is like 762 units or whatever, if I take that off, you can see there's just a bit more of that green in the surrounding area, and you don't get any sort of harsh radius because the radius is so large that it feathers out quite nicely. Another good thing with the Frischluft is that because our Z depth came in here, I had to actually, this is the thing with Octane, your Z depth will render almost white and it looks wrong, but then if you crush the levels, because it's 32-bit, you've got all that information. If you crush the levels down, that will allow Frischluft to be able to work with it, and you'll be able to sort of set your level of blurring. And the good thing is, if you look up here at where we've got the cables, then you get a nice amount of blur around these cables and the background objects. So you can see it's sort of like bleeding and sort of light wrapping around those cables, and it just kind of sells it a bit more. And then the final thing that I did was that, well no, two final things I did was I put in some rain. And the rain is just this CC rainfall. So what we want to do in the rainfall is make sure that we get the green from the sign reflected in the rain, even though it's not directly over the top of it. And you do that with background reflection. So that's on 100%, and I've spread it out quite widely. So I've put that on like 700 units, and so we can see that. And then I made a rainfall with just the rain preset in particular, and that is here. So all I had to do then was copy my composite comp and blur it and make it huge. Let's just take that track matte off. So that's how I've managed to get this color into the particular rain, even though it's not directly over the comp. And then we get this really subtle, it's all about the 10%, right? So we get this really subtle coloured rain, and the good thing about the particular rain is that you've got better 3D depth settings, so when the camera's animating around, it is actually moving properly. Not that it really matters, but it's all about selling it, right? And so here's what we've got. I've done a really cheap grade. I've just put some film grain on it and a bit of a vignette, and yeah, that's about it really. The other thing that I did is I went onto freesound.org, and thanks to hanstimm, corsica-s and maurice-j-k, I used their sound effects just to give it our lovely moody soundtrack. And yeah, I think that's about it for the composite. So here's the Cinema4D version of my project file, and I will be putting the scene files, Octane and the Cinema4D, on Gumroad. So I'll post a link to that below the video. Yeah, that's it. If you liked it, please, if you want to see another tutorial, if you want to learn something else, if you think there's something that I missed out, please let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more, hit subscribe, because that's always a good motivation, and hit the like button if it's worth it. So thanks guys. Yeah, this was really fun. So cheers. Bye.